Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the Fantasy 420, where today we're going to be returning to the hardwood and discussing some Week 23 NBA semi-final playoff priority waiver wire ads for the upcoming fantasy basketball week. This is obviously really important and exciting time in the season. If you all are listening, you hopefully made the semifinals of your fantasy basketball playoffs, and hopefully these ads will get you into that final game championship week. Once again, like all of our other waiver wire videos, all the names on this list are less than 50% owned in Yahoo leagues, and we're going to primarily focus on points-based leagues instead of categories leagues. So the first name I have on this list today is Jalen Brunson. He is a point guard for the Dallas Mavericks and 49% owned on Yahoo right now. Since the Dennis Smith Jr. trade, he has been inserted in the starting lineup, and he's been getting around 30 minutes a game. He has at least 26 fantasy points per game over his last 6 games, with a high of 48, which was a 34-point 5 rebound and 4 assist game. Obviously a huge game. He is the 47th ranked player over the last week. Doncic is probable on the game today. However, I don't think his workload is going to be crazy. The team is out of the playoffs, in the developing young players stage / resting the franchise for next season, so they already know what they have out of Doncic. Obviously, he's had an amazing year, so I don't think they'll go crazy with his minutes. They'll just give him to Brunson. He's a 22-year-old, really young guy who they're going to develop. The 3rd pick in the 2nd round, so almost essentially a late 1st-round pick. So there's reason to give him time in these late end-of-season games. And he's obviously a big part of their future. So get him experience now for next year so he's rolling, just like I've mentioned with Dwight Powell, Kleber, a few of the other guys on that Mavericks team. And finally, he plays 4 games like everybody else on this list at least. So the next name we have on this list is Jacob Poeltl, center for the San Antonio Spurs, who's around 27% owned. He was the 9th pick overall in 2016 for Toronto, and he obviously came over to the Spurs in that Kawhi Leonard trade. He was a big piece of it for the Spurs, so people were really high on him early in the year as a sleeper. He started the year off really slow, and everybody dropped him, but now he is rolling in that team. He's finally comfortable in Popovich's system and his rotation in that lineup. He has 7 starts in a row as a healthy player. He did miss 1 game in there, but he's starting. He's around 25 minutes a game, and he's on a playoff team with a lot of incentive to win. He is ranked number 52 overall in the last 7 days in points-based leagues, and he had 2 consecutive games in a row with 5 blocks. So anyone with that defensive upside with blocks and steals, which are obviously worth 3 points each, are extremely important. You got to bump them up a little bit if they give you that defensive upside. So I really like Jacob Poeltl for this week, especially. The next name I'm going to go to is Marcus Smart. Obviously, it would be a smart ad for your team. Point guard, shooting guard for the Boston Celtics, who's also around 49% owned. He's a defensive beast. He's averaging at least 1 steal per game this year, which is really good. He has 5 in his last game, and which was also a 47.7 fantasy point game. So he's just really on a heater right now. He's also a good bet for around 5 assists, and he had 9 last game. So he's just really riding hot. He gets around 30 minutes a game, also on a playoff team in Boston, so a lot of incentive for him to do well. He's the 78th average player over the last 7 days, and there might be reason for them to rest Irving, give him less minutes, possibly a DNP here as we go later on in the season to keep him healthy for the playoffs. So I really like Marcus Smart. Another name I'm going to mention is Bam Adebayo, center power forward from Miami. He's around 47% owned. Miami's in dogfight for the 8th seed, so they're going to play whoever they feel is the best. Nobody's going to be on a minutes restriction. Everybody's going to be going all out. And he's a committed starter now. Spoelstra has given him the green light over Whiteside, getting around 25 minutes a game. He has 30 plus fantasy points in 4 of his last 5 games, and he is number 88 overall in his last 7. So obviously 7 days, so obviously worth an add in a majority of leagues at this end of the year. He's also a well-rounded categories player. I know we've mentioned points-based leagues as our baseline for this video, but he's also going to get a lot of stats and not hurt you in the percentages, so I would bump him up a little bit over the other names on this list if you are competing in a categories league. A couple more names I want to mention, and then we'll finish up. The first being Harry Giles. He is a power forward center for the Sacramento Kings. He's around 8% owned only. I really like him because he has a 4-game set this week and a 4-game set next week. So if you are in a minimal ads league, you could get a very important 8 games in 2 weeks. He's averaged at spot 104 in his last 7 days. So that's around a spot you could have on a 10-team league. So he's just been coming around as of late, and especially his last game where he had 38.7 fantasy points. I will admit he does average around 20 minutes per game as a reserve, so that is scary. And he could have a 15-point around fantasy game stinker, but he's also a good bet to go around 25 with a little bit of blow-up upside, and that extra game next week is super huge, really does help. And the final name I'll mention, super deep sleeper if you want to gamble a little bit, is Kevon Looney, power forward center for the Golden State Warriors, 4% owned. I'm going to mention him on this list because Golden State has 5 games, which includes 2 back-to-backs. I highly doubt that Cousins would play in either of those games, so I would expect Looney to get a big boost in the games during which Cousins sits. KD was planning on playing today, which is Monday, but he is also a little bit banged up, so maybe Looney plays a little bit more of those minutes. Maybe they rest the other guys because they're wanting them to be healthy for the playoffs. Excuse me. It's also just the amount of league size, the amount of ads you have in your week, how risk averse you are. But he's also a supreme late week ad because 3 of his games are in the last 4 days. So if you wanted to get a few guys in early on the week and then put Looney in your lineup, he'll have those games later on in the week, and you can really optimize your lineup that way. So there's a few reasons that you can look at Looney. He could be a really big help to your team, as well as all these other players I've mentioned. I really appreciate you all coming to my channel. I'll have another video for you tomorrow, and I wish you the best of luck this week for your fantasy semi-final basketball week. All right, everybody? I will talk to you later, and I hope you all have a great day. Peace.